Welcome back, listeners, to Sandman Stories Presents, a folklore podcast where I read you to sleep or until the next story. I'm your host, Dustin. Today we are back in the book of Filipino folklore, written down by Mary Cooke Cole. In the first story, a Superman has a very unattractive mom and gets tricked into marrying the wrong woman. In the second story, a man finds a surprise in a cave, but on his way back, the treasures vanish. And in the final story, a Tinguian man learns why blankets shouldn't look like bacon. Okay, let's begin. The Story of Sayen, a Tinguian Tale. In the depths of the dark forest where people seldom went, there lived a wizened old Allen. The skin on her wrinkled face was as tough as a carbo hide, and her long arms with fingers pointing back at the wrist were horrible to look at. Now this frightful creature had a son whose name was Sayen, and he was as handsome as his mother was ugly. He was also a brave man, and often went far away alone to fight. On these journeys Sayen sometimes met beautiful girls, and though he wanted to marry them, he could not decide upon one. Hearing that one Danipan was more beautiful than any other, he made up his mind to go and ask her to be his wife. Now Danipan was very shy, and when she heard that Sayen was coming to her house, she hid behind the door and sent out her servant Lei to meet him. And so it happened that Sayen, not seeing Danipan, married Lei, thinking that she was her beautiful mistress. He took her away to a house that he had built on the edge of the forest, for though he wished to be near his old home, he dare not allow his bride to set eyes on his ugly mother. For some time they lived happily together here, and then one day when Sayen was making a plow under his house, he heard Lei singing softly to their baby in the room above, and this is what she sang. Sayen thinks I'm Danipan, but Lei I am. Sayen thinks I'm Danipan, but Lei I am. When Sayen heard this, he knew that he had been deceived, and he pondered for a long time what he should do. The next morning he went to the field to plow, for it was near rice planting time. But before he left his house he called out to his wife, "When the sun is straight above, you and the baby shall bring food to me, for I shall be very busy in the field." Before he began to plow, however, he cut the bamboo supports of the bridge which led to the field, so that when Lei and the baby came with his food, they had no sooner stepped on the bridge than it went down with them, and they were drowned. Sayen was again free. He took his spear, his axe, and his shield, and at once went to the town of Danipan, and there he began killing people on all sides. Terror spread through the town. No one could stop his terrible work of destruction until Danipan came out of her house and begged him to spare the people so that she might have someone to borrow fire from. Her great beauty amazed him, and he ceased killing, and asked her to prepare some betel nut for him to chew, as he was very tired. She did so, and when he had chewed the nut, he spat it on the people he had killed, and they came back to life again. Then he married Danipan and took her to his home. Now it happened about this time that the people of Magosang were in great trouble. At the end of a successful hunt, while they were dividing the meat amongst themselves, a kamao, a murderous spirit that looks like a man, would come and ask them how many they had caught. If they answered 2, then he would also say that he had caught 2. And when they went home, they would find 2 people of the town dead. As often as they went to hunt, the kamao did this, and many of the people of Magosang were dead, and those that were not were living in great fear. Finally, they heard of the brave man Sayen, and they begged him to come help them. Sayen listened to all that they had told and said, "I will go with you to hunt, and while you are dividing the meat I will hide behind the trees. When the kamao comes out, he will ask you how many deer you have. He will smell me, but you must say that you do not know where I am." So the people went to hunt, and when they had killed 2 deer, they cooked them over a fire and began to divide them. Just then the kamao arrived and said,
"How many have you?"
"We have 2, replied the people.
"I have 2 also,"
said the kamao.
"but I smell Sayen."
"We do not know where Sayen is," said the people. And just then he sprang out and killed the kamao, and the people were greatly relieved. Now when Kabonian, a great spirit, heard what Sayen had done, he went to him and said,
Sayen, you are a brave man because you have killed the Kamal. Tomorrow I will fight with you. You must remain on the low ground by the river, and I will go to the hill above.
So the following day Sayen went to the low ground by the river. He had not waited long before he heard a great sound like a storm, and he knew that Kabonian was coming. He looked up, and there stood the great warrior, posing with his spear, which was as large as a big tree.
Are you brave, Sayen?
He called in a voice like thunder as he threw the weapon. Yes, answered Sayen, and he caught the spear. This surprised Kabonian, and he threw his axe, which was as large as the roof of a house, and Sayen caught that also. Then Kabonian saw that this man was indeed a brave man, and he went down to Sayen and fought him face to face until both of them were tired, but neither one could overcome the other. When Kabonian saw that in Sayen he had found one as strong and as brave as himself, he proposed that they go together to fight the people of different towns. And they started out at once. Many people were killed by the strong pair, and why they themselves could never be captured was a great mystery. For it was not known that one was the spirit Kabonian, and the other was the son of an Allen. If he was surrounded in a river, Sayen would become a fish and hide so that people could not find him. And if he was trapped in a town, he would become a chicken and go under the house in the chicken coop. In this way he escaped many times. Finally, one night after he had killed many in one town, the people decided to watch him, and they saw him go to roost with the chickens. The next day they placed a fish trap under the house near the chicken coop, and that night, when Sayen went under the house, he was caught in the trap and killed. The end. Okay, in the second story, The Tree with the Agate Beads. More than 100 seasons ago, a Tinguian went one day to the mountains to hunt. Accompanied by his faithful dog, he made his way steadily up the mountainside, only halting where it was necessary to cut a path through the jungle, and the dog ran here and there, searching in the thick underbrush. On and on he went without seeing any game, and then, when he was almost at the top of the highest peak, the dog gave out a sharp yelp, and out of the brush leaped a fine deer. Zip went the man's spear, and it pierced the animal's side. For an instant he waited, but the deer did not fall. On it ran at full speed, and a moment later it plunged into a hole in the ground, with the man and the dog in close pursuit. A short distance from the entrance of the cave, it opened up into large, spacious rooms, and before long the man realized he was hopelessly lost. In the distance he could hear the baying of the dog, and with no other guide he hurried on through the darkness. Following the sound, he went for a long time from one unfamiliar room to another, stumbling in the darkness and striking against the stone walls. And then suddenly, his outstretched hands grasped a small tree on which berries grew. Astonished at finding anything growing in this dark place, he broke off a branch, and as he did, the shrub began to talk in a strange language. Terrified, the man ran in the direction he had last heard the dog, and a moment later he found himself in the open air on the banks of the Abra River, with a dead deer at his feet. When he examined the twig in which he held in his hand, he saw to his great surprise that the berries were agate beads of great value, and packing the deer on his back, he hastened home, where he told his wonderful story. The sight of the beautiful beads convinced the people that he had told the truth, and a number of men at once returned with him to secure the tree. Their quest, however, was unsuccessful, for when they reached the spot, the evil spirit had taken the tree away, and on the walls of the cave it had made strange carvings, which even to this day can be seen. The end. Okay, and the third story, the striped blanket of the Tinguian. 3 Tinguian once went to the mountains to hunt deer. They took their blankets with them, for they expected to be gone for several days, and the nights in the mountains are cold. The blankets of the 2 men were the blue and white designs, which are commonly worn by the Tinguian, but that of the third man was covered with red and yellow stripes, like the back of a little wild pig. At night the men rolled up their blankets and lay down under a tree to sleep. But while the one in the striped blanket was still awake, 2 spirits came near and saw him. "Oh," he heard one spirit say to the other, "here we have something to eat, for here is a little wild pig." Then the man quickly took off the blanket of one of his sleeping friends and put it on his own place. Very soon the spirits came and ate the man under the striped blanket. Since that time, the Tinguian never sleep under that kind of blanket, if they are where the spirits can get them. The end. Wow, so much killing in that first story. Like they teamed up and let's go kill more people. Oof. I did like it when he spit on the people and they came back to life. I always enjoy that part of the stories. And the whole thing just sounded like a warrior tale. Like, we're going to fight. Okay, fighting. Oh yeah, a little bit of romance. Fighting. The reference to the women was just passing reference. Oh, she's really beautiful. Okay, we had kids. Okay, I killed her servant and my kid. And, yeah, married again. No problem. Also, don't trick demons. Don't do the, oh, I'll just send out my servant in her place. That's not cool. The second story was a cool little lost cave of treasures fable. I'd like to know what those carvings are. I would like to know more about it. I would like to have a longer story of that. It was way too short. And the third one is cute, but it will make me stop sleeping under a pizza blanket for sure. And I am enjoying these stories. The podcast shout out is to the Beyond the Rainbow podcast hosted by CJ. This show covers crimes that involve the LGBT plus community. She does a great job of shedding light on stories that might go unnoticed. I recommend the Salmoneo episode for some fine voice acting. Hint, hint. And if you like the podcast as much as I do, go and give them a like, a rating, and a review. And the listener shout out is to Ankara, Turkey. Google says that Ankara, Turkey's cosmopolitan capital, sits in the country's central Anatolia region. It's a center for the performing arts, home to the State Opera and Ballet, the Presidential Symphony Orchestra, and several national theater companies. Overlooking the city is Anıtkabir, the enormous hilltop mausoleum of Kemal Ataturk, modern Turkey's first president, who declared Ankara the capital in 1923. It looks like a cool enough city, but I'll still have to go to Istanbul first. But to my listeners in Ankara, I say, Teşekkürler ve iyi geceler. Thank you, and good night.